Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So, my wife Izzy and I have some very exciting news, which is that we are now parents. We had a little baby girl a few weeks ago, and she's very cute. In this video, I wanted to share a little life update and some reflections on what it's been like being a dad so far. My wife Izzy has made some videos and will continue to make some videos on her channel talking about the experience of motherhood, which, shock horror, is actually very, very, very different from the experience of fatherhood. So in this video, I'm gonna share my own perspective of being a dad and like how having a baby, being a dad, affects things like productivity and work and business and just sort of general life plans. I was in two minds about making this video because I think what I want to share in this video will trigger a lot of people. And initially I was thinking of doing this video and I was like, I was sort of cosplaying what someone should be saying in a YouTube video when they become a new dad, that, oh my God, it's like the best thing in the world, and oh my God, it's been so incredibly hard, and all of this stuff. But that's just actually not my experience of it. And my actual experience of it is quite different than what I was told it would be. So the general narrative, and actually the general experience for most people, is that having a baby is really, really, really hard. There's also the general experience that having a baby is very, very rewarding and fulfilling and meaningful and all of that kind of stuff. And it's weird because I feel like I've had quite a lot of the second without very much of the first. So for me, having a baby has been quite joyful and fulfilling and meaningful and fun, but it's not been very hard at all. It's been basically zero suffering. It's been basically zero struggle. And that sort of feels like cheating. It's very unfair that it's been the case. It's not been like that for my wife. My wife has found it very joyful and meaningful and fulfilling, and also found it very, very hard because pregnancy, because childbirth, because breastfeeding, because stuff. Again, I don't want to share my wife's perspective in this video because she can do that on her own channel. I want to share what it's like being a dad, where you basically get all of the positives without any of the negatives. It's just really unfair. Oh man, it's just so unfair. Okay, here's the thing, right? The setup that we have in our life is such that I personally get to experience all the benefits of fatherhood without any of the downsides, it seems, or without many of the downsides that other people experience. And I'm not sure how to feel about this. Part of me feels like, wait a minute, there's something about this that feels a bit wrong. Am I just missing something? You know, the fact that I'm not suffering through the experience of being a dad. Does that mean I'm a bad parent for not suffering and for not struggling so hard compared to what I hear people say on the internet and what I've read in all these books and what people in society seem to say about like parenthood? It's like, oh my God, it's this incredibly hard thing. And B, am I missing out on some mystical form of meaning that comes purely through suffering and struggle and sacrifice and those things? I don't think so, but I could be wrong. This is like one of those things where I'm actually not sure what's going on. And partly the reason I'm making this video is because if you're a parent, I would genuinely love to hear your perspective on this. I'd love to get your hot take in the comments down below. I know some people are gonna hate on me for the stuff I'm gonna say in this video, and that's okay. But like, if you're a parent, I would just love to get some different perspectives on this. So basically, the TLDR of this is that because of the life setup that we have, and because of the business that I have, which is like a lifestyle business that lets me work from home, work remotely, basically make silly videos on the internet and kind of make a decent chunk of money doing so. And the fact that we live in Hong Kong, where it's very cheap and very easy to get domestic help and things like nannies and housekeepers and stuff. Because of that setup, me as the dad, I can have basically all the benefits of fatherhood, seemingly without many of the costs. Which is kind of weird, right? When you have a baby, there's the joy part of the equation, and then there's the difficult sacrifice, suffering, struggle side of the equation. The joy comes from, whoa, we've created this baby. My wife has freaking grown this baby over 9 months. Wow, that's like really cool. And is like feeding the baby through milk that she's producing. Whoa, that's just absolutely mind-blowing. And the baby is insanely cute and sort of occasionally smiles a little bit and doesn't do much other than sort of pee, poo, cry, sleep, scream, wriggle, neck kind of going all over the place, all of that kind of stuff. She has started to smile now, which is, actually, when I'm holding the baby in my hands and she like smiles at me, that there's something nice, there's something very, very joyful about that. The joyful parts are like playing with the baby and watching her do stuff and watching her do tummy time and try and raise her little neck and like giving her a bath and things like that. It was quite fun changing the nappy the first few times, but changing a nappy gets boring after a while. Like, you don't want to have to do it. all the time. That's all the joy side of the equation. And I hear the joy increases as they get older when they can actually start to interact and all that sort of stuff. So I feel like I've been experiencing quite a lot of the happiness side of things. But then there's the, oh my God, this is really hard side of the equation. And the reason people say this is really hard, my understanding of this is that from experience now and from speaking to other people who are parents, is that there is a long list of jobs to be done, to use the jobs to be done business framework. There's a long list of jobs to be done. And as a parent, normally you have to do quite a lot of those jobs.
Oh, by the way, if you're enjoying this so far, then you might like to check out Brilliant, who are very kindly the paid partners of this segment of the video. Now, when I first learned to code many years ago, initially, I did it through quite a lot of dabbling. I never really understood the core concept, and I just sort of dabbled and tried to sort of hack things together. But now that I'm taking it a lot more seriously, and now that me and my team are trying to build our own kind of suite of productivity apps, I found it very helpful to have a deeper kind of learning as it relates to programming and coding and algorithms. And Brilliant is one of my absolute favorite platforms for doing that. If you have been living under a rock and haven't heard by now, Brilliant is an amazing online platform that teaches you skills around maths and data science and computer science, including how algorithms work, including how to code, including how AI models work. And what I really love about it is that it really teaches you from a principles first perspective. It's sort of like how they teach at places like Oxford and Cambridge, where it's like, you get a problem and you figure out how to work through the problem and you learn the underlying principle behind how to solve the problem thing before you move on to the next one. And that is just a way better way of learning than passively consuming information or trying to get quick and dirty quizzes or anything like that. And so with the programming courses on Brilliant, for example, they don't just teach you how to copy and paste code or how to type a particular vibe coding prompt into AI. Instead, they help you develop the logical thinking patterns that make you a good programmer, whether you're learning Python or diving into how algorithms actually work. And I've genuinely found through using Brilliant for the last several years that wrestling with these kind of interactive problems genuinely has made me a much better thinker across everything I do. If you would like to give Brilliant a try, you can head over to brilliant.org/AliAbdaal, and that will give you a completely free 30-day trial. And if you do decide to go for the annual premium subscription, that will give you 20% off as well. So thank you so much, Brilliant, for partnering with us on this video, and let's get back to it.
So what are the jobs to be done when it comes to raising a child? Well, I didn't actually know a lot of these until I started reading books about this and B actually had a child. So I'm sort of, if you're a parent, please forgive me for trying to describe something that is abundantly obvious to you. But I know a lot of people watch this channel who are also not parents, and I'm gonna speak as if I'm speaking to myself from 2 years ago or a year ago where I didn't have a baby, and then I was like, okay, here's what goes on. So basically, we happened to require a 5-day hospital stay in this fancy hospital here in Hong Kong because the baby had some issues when she was born and needed to be on antibiotics for a few days and stuff. So we ended up staying in the hospital for 5 days. And so actually we got quite a lot of training from the midwives in the hospital because me and my wife both were like, all right, well, we're here for 5 days. We're paying all this money for these 5 days. We may as well take advantage of the fact that there's all these very competent professional midwives around who are delighted that we're taking an interest in baby care and teaching us how to do stuff. So we had a bit of a training course in stuff, but then you get the baby comes home, and now basically what you have to do to the baby is you have to feed the baby pretty much 8 times a day. You feed the baby either direct through breast milk, or you can use pumped breast milk. So there is a device called a breast milk pump, and there's all sorts of really high-tech devices here that the mom puts on her chest, and then milk comes out. This is absolutely magical. How it's like a miracle of biology and engineering that you can attach a pump to you, and we've even got some wearable pumps where you wear the pump and then you press a button and then the milk comes out, and then it ends up in bottles, and then you can put those bottles in the fridge, and then they last in the fridge for a few days, or you can stick them in the freezer where they last for a few months, and then you can feed breast milk to the baby from a bottle. So actually, I've done quite a few feeds to the baby where I've taken the breast milk, put it in a bottle, and fed the baby. This looks kind of weird, but this actually is sit the baby down, hold the head, do the thing, and then she's and it's very nice and it's very cute. And one of my favorite things to do with the bebe is feeding the bebe from the bottle. But so either bebe feeds from the breast or from the bottle, or you do formula milk. Or you do some combination of all three. So we're doing breastfeeding plus bottle feeding with exclusively breast milk. So anyway, baby needs to be fed 8 times a day. On average, every 3 hours, she's got to feed. And it takes somewhere between half an hour to an hour every single feeding session. Because here's the thing no one told me. It's not just about feeding the freaking baby. It's not just that you stick the bottle in their mouth or you stick them on the boob and then they feed and it's done. No, it's not that simple. If only it were that simple. Instead, what you have to do is every now and then you take them off the boob or you take them off the bottle and you stick them on your shoulders, and you have to burp the baby. You have to slap him on the back, you know, that kind of thing. And you have to burp the baby, for goodness sake. Like, because if they don't burp, then they end up vomiting all the freaking milk. I've had it happen a couple of times to me where the baby then vomits all over you, and then you're like, well, good thing I've got 18 copies of this one Lululemon t-shirt. So like, I don't really care if it gets ruined because I just have another one in the wardrobe and I can just wash it. But like, you know, you end up sticky and like with like milk on your chest all day because you didn't burp the baby. So you have to like feed the baby a bit, stick the baby on the thing, burp the baby. Burping the baby is also really an art rather than a science. In theory, you just like pat the baby on the back a few times or do like this sort of thing, and then the baby goes or whatever, and then burps. And sometimes this happens within like 10 seconds and you feel like you're absolutely on top of the freaking world because you're like, yes, I have officially managed to burp this freaking child. Yes. And then you can go back to the feeding and then life's good. But sometimes it doesn't take 10 seconds to burp the baby. It takes a whole freaking 20 minutes to burp the baby. So you're there being like, and then you sit the baby down and you try and do, you know, do the different things that the midwives taught around different burping positions. You know, you stick them on your lap and you like sort of move them around like this to get the gas to freaking, and you go, and sometimes they spit a bit, so you have to sort of like hold the neck with like one hand with like a little cloth. Imagine this is a cloth on the neck. You know, do this, and then you have to like, and it's sometimes the baby burps within minutes, within seconds or minutes. Sometimes it takes a whole 20 minutes to burp the baby. But you have to burp the baby like 2 or 3 times. 2 if you're pro, 3 if you're like me and not pro, during a feeding session, which makes the whole affair take about an hour. And then, after you burp the baby, you have to put the baby to bed, because the baby then needs to sleep for another like 2 hours before they wake up for the next feed. And putting the baby to sleep is sometimes really easy, because sometimes as they're drinking the milk, they just sort of start to fall asleep. And then you stick him on the thing, you stick him in a swaddle, which is this like magical piece of cloth that people have designed. It's like a straitjacket for the baby. And you have to put the baby in a straitjacket, because if you don't put the baby in a straitjacket, and then the baby gets startled because they've moved their own arms, and then they wake up and then they start crying. And that's annoying, because you don't want the baby to wake up and start crying, because it's bad for their development if they're not sleeping, and it's bad for you as the parent, because then the baby's up and starting crying and you don't want the baby to be up and crying. So what do you do? After feeding them, you make sure that, you know, you change the nappy or whatever, or sometimes you change the nappy before feeding them, because, you know, that's more pro, because the nappy is quite stimulating. Anyway, so you change the nappy, you stick them in the swaddle, you burp them, and then they burp and you're like, yes, okay. And then you hope that like while they're like on your this thing, and while they're being burped in this little swaddle, like little wrapped up like a little caterpillar, you hope that while that's happening, they're like slowly drifting off. And you can't, it's tricky because you can't really see their face, right? Because if you're like, our baby likes to be burped in this position where her head is sort of like facing behind me. So what I will sometimes do is I'll walk around, I'll go to a mirror and I'll be like, okay, is the baby asleep? I'll look in the mirror. Sometimes, you know, I'll come to this room, I will look in the camera where I have like a monitor, and I'll sit here and be like, is the baby awake? Is the baby asleep? And then, okay, at some point you're like, yes. After like 20 minutes of just sort of sitting there and doing like, shh, shh, shh. Shushing a baby actually really helps. There is a book called The Happiest Baby on the Block, which a friend sent to us. Nir Eyal, he wrote the book Indistractable, which is very good. He's a friend and a parent, and he sent us this book, The Happiest Baby on the Block. And it talks about actually how the shh sound is not just, you know, I used to think the shh, when people were shushing their baby, that this was like some bullshit, like social approval seeking for other parents, right? Because like, if the baby's crying and you're like, shh, shush, shh, 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 like, why would the baby shut up by you just telling them to shush? Isn't that just you signaling to the other parents around you that like, bro, I'm trying to make the baby not cry, like, don't judge me. But no, it turns out actually the shh sound is like the sound that babies hear when they're in the womb or something. And so that's why like white noise or like rain sounds or like shh is actually quite good for babies, because like it makes them feel safe and like they're in the womb. So you fed the baby, you've burped them, you've changed the nappy, you swaddled them, and now they're like shh. And then fingers crossed, you hope to God that like, please let the baby fall asleep. And then you're like, baby's fallen asleep. Yes, okay. And then it's about putting the baby down and sticking them in the cot. We have a cute cot, so we stick the baby in the cot and praying to Allah that like while you're putting the baby down in the cot, that the baby does not wake up. Because sometimes, as soon as you put the baby down, the baby starts to freaking scream. And I'm like, I don't want to be put down. And you're like, oh, God damn it. And then you try and then they fall asleep on you, and then you try and put them down, and then you're like, oh. And it becomes this like, oh my God, she's in the cot. she's still asleep. Oh, she's wriggling, but she's still asleep. Okay, shh. And then it's sort of like a tiptoe withdrawal away from the friggin' room, because you're like, okay, now the baby's asleep. Now we're gonna tiptoe out. We're not gonna make any noise. We're gonna close the door. Oh, yes, the baby's asleep now. And now, fingers crossed, you have 2 hours of sleep until the next feed, 2 hours later. And then you repeat the process. And you have to do this about 8 times a day or night. It's like, you know, in the first few weeks to months, babies wake up at nighttime because they need to be fed at nighttime. And so this is the sort of logistics of baby management. There's this sort of like loop of feed baby, burp baby, change baby's nappy, swaddle baby, encourage them to sleep, put them down and hope for the best, and then hope they sleep for some amount of time. Now, if you're lucky, we were quite lucky. This whole cycle takes 3 hours, and you have 3 hour times 8 cycles in a 24-hour period. If you are unlucky, and we know lots of people who are very unlucky, the baby does not actually sleep for those 2 hours. The baby sleeps for 20 minutes or for 1 hour. And now you're having to do this cycle 12 times a day or 18 times a day, or even 24 times a day, because every single, like, if the baby only sleeps for half an hour, you're having to, like, you know, they sleep for half an hour, you try and get half an hour of sleep in that time, and then the baby is up again, screaming, and then they want to, like, feed again, and now you have to do the whole process again, and this is a total nightmare for a lot of parents. Total freaking nightmare. So this is really, really, really tough if you're in that position. So that's, like, the hard work of baby. Then there's, like, fun stuff that happens as well, right? So you've got this basic cycle of, like, there's, you know, 3 hours times 8 every 24 hours, which you do for, like, basically until they're like 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. Apparently it's different. I've been talking to ChatGPT and Claude and stuff about this, but apparently it's different for different babies. And at some point they can sleep through the night, and sleep through the night is actually defined as they can sleep for 6 hours in a row, not 8 hours, 6 hours. If a baby sleeps for like 5 or 6 hours in a row after being fed, burped, changed and shit, then the doctors are like, oh my God, amazing, the baby has slept through the night. No, the baby has not freaking slept through the night. The baby slept for 5 hours. 5 hours is not sleeping through the night. 9 hours would be sleeping through the night. But no, if they do 5 or 6 hours, and oh my God, so good, such a good baby, etc., etc. But then, you know, hopefully the parents have a chance to sleep for those like 5-6 hour window, and then you can roughly survive like that. So then there are the fun parts that are also associated with having a baby. So for example, either once a day or a few times a week, you can give the baby a bath. That's quite fun. You know, you stick them in this little bowl, little tub, tiny ass tub. You fill it up with water, make sure the water's a good temperature, use a little temperature thing, stick them in the bath. They enjoy being in the bath. You sort of splash some water on them and stuff. And then you do that for about 5 minutes, and then whatevs. In our case, baby has eczema, so we then have to moisturize the shit out of her, like with this emollients and ointments and stuff, which is kind of annoying, and she doesn't particularly like it, but like we try and make it fun. You know, there's some like playtime that you do where you stick the baby on, I don't know, and like talk to them and read to them and like, you know, get them to look at random stuff. There's tummy time where you turn the baby, stick him on their tummy, and then they're like trying to raise their head up, and you have to do this for like a few minutes each day so that they can strengthen their head muscles, because otherwise babies don't know how to hold their head up and they just sort of flop around all over the place, which is why, and they apparently can stop themselves from breathing, which is why you have to like hold the head up until they get enough like neck muscles to be able to actually hold the head up. And then occasionally you take baby to hospital appointments to get vaccinated and stuff. The basic tenets of baby care are basically that 3 hour cycle of feed, change, burp, swaddle, sleep, fingers crossed, hope for the best, pray, repeat the process ad nauseum for many, many, many months. Now, this process is very difficult for a lot of parents because it's not too bad during the day where, you know, you do the cycle and then you've got like half an hour to 2 hours if you're really lucky to like do something, and then it's to do something of your own, and then it's time to do the thing again. It's like not too bad during the day, especially if you have at least one of the parents staying at home purely dedicated to baby care. But this is particularly annoying at nighttime, because at nighttime you still have to wake up, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times, sometimes 4 times, sometimes even more times if you're really unlucky. You got to wake up multiple times at night to do this whole process, because the baby doesn't care whether it's day or night. And this is really, really, really hard for parents, right? Because imagine like only being able to sleep for like an hour at a time until the baby cries and starts to wake up again. Or, God forbid, if you're really unlucky, only half an hour at a time. Or if you're really lucky, even if you're really lucky and your baby is like perfect in this sort of cycle, you're still only getting 2 hours of sleep at a time before you have to wake up and do the process at nighttime. And getting 2 hours of broken sleep in the night is kind of like a form of torture. Even in the best case, it's a real struggle doing the night shifts for babies. And I did not appreciate this until I had a baby and did the night shift myself to realize, oh, okay, this is why people say that having a baby is particularly hard, because of the night shift. The night shift is really freaking annoying. You would think it would be cute, right? Like, oh, the baby's waking up at night and it's so sweet, and oh, she's hungry and now I get to feed her and it's so fun and cute and nice. And it is fun and cute and nice like the first 2 or 3 times. Beyond that, it's not fun and cute and nice anymore. It's like, oh, frick's sake, this baby's waking up at nighttime again. And now I just need to, yeah, it's fine. You know, I'm going to enjoy every moment because, you know, time only happens once. I'm going to enjoy every freaking moment. And then it's like, I'm going to feed the baby. And then you're like exhausted and you're trying not to fall asleep while you're feeding the baby or with the baby on you because that's like bad and, you know, sleep training and stuff. No, wait, no, it's not sleep training. Sleep safety is a whole thing because there's this thing called sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. I think that's what it stands for. We learned about it in med school, but it's like a thing that parents often worry about, which is that babies just seem to just randomly die for no reason. And we think it's, you know, if you put them in dodgy positions when they're sleeping, maybe they suffocate themselves and they can't, like, you know, especially before they can like move their neck and stuff. So you can't actually fall asleep with the baby asleep on you because that's unsafe. So you have to put them in the cot. And there's all sorts of rules around like co-sleeping with a baby and how that can be unsafe, this, that, and the other. Anyway, so you're exhausted and you're getting like uninterrupted sleep. If you're really lucky, you're getting 2-hour stretches, but if you're unlucky, you're getting 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour at a time. It's really, really, really hard to actually get a good night's sleep with sleeping in these sort of interrupted segments of time. And so you wake up the next day and you're like, oh my God. And then you have to do this whole process in the daytime and then again at night. And you have to do this for a whole freaking 6 months or 9 months or 12 months, depending on the baby. That is like genuinely a form of torture. It's not fun for parents to be in that position. That is why a big part of why people say that having a baby is really, really hard. But if you have the right sort of setup, you can basically speedrun this and like Neo in the Matrix dodge a lot of the hardships that come with having a baby. At least that's what we have found. Or rather, I won't speak for my wife. That's at least what I have found. Izzy has not managed to dodge the hardships that come with having a baby because Izzy is breastfeeding the baby and has to either breastfeed or pump or both. And that is a biological thing that she is tied to doing that can't really be outsourced, and we didn't really want to outsource it. But as the dad, all of this list of jobs to be done, it's all kind of optional. There is no biological imperative for me to be the one to do the stuff. And the reason they're optional is because we had what was called a confinement nanny. Now, this is a thing that I just had not heard of until we moved here to Hong Kong. There is a thing in Chinese culture called the confinement period, which is usually like the first 100 days or something, or the first 3 months or something like that after you have a baby. The idea is that the mum and the baby stay confined in the house, where they're not allowed to leave the house, and they are on this whole, the mum gets put on this whole diet of like healthy vegetables and soups and traditional Chinese medicine bits and bobs, and she has to not drink water, but it has to be teas, different herbal teas, and she's not allowed to shower. She's only allowed to shower with ginger water. So we had like this whole freaking tub of ginger water that Izzy would like shower with using a camping shower and stuff. So there's this confinement period which is designed to help the mum recover and is really good apparently from what Izzy tells me and what I hear from our other friends who are in Hong Kong who've had kids. It's really good because it allows the mother to recover. But the other benefit is that of being here in Hong Kong is that you can hire a confinement nanny who is a professional baby care expert who comes to your house and lives with you. You know, there's the option of live out, but we hired someone to live, like literally live with us, and who lives with you for anywhere from, well, as long as you want really. We had ours for the first 6 weeks. I wish it was longer than that. So for the first 6 weeks, when all of this like baby cycle is happening, there is a dedicated, or in our case, and actually in the case of a lot of our friends who live here in Hong Kong, because this is like a standard thing that people do in Hong Kong, there is a nanny here who is doing the cooking and doing all of the baby care. And the parents, you know, baby care for the parents then becomes optional. You can do it if you feel like it. You know, I changed a bunch of nappies because I wanted to learn and I wanted to see. People said that changing the nappy is bonding with the baby. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, there's like a minimum effective dose here. It's like, you know, changing a few nappies a week is quite fun. Changing more than a few nappies a week, it's like, well, you know, there's diminishing returns, so I don't really want to do that. I enjoy doing baby playtime. You know, she plays for about 10 minutes at a time, or I'll look at her and read whatever book I'm reading to her out loud, or I'll, speak to her about the latest video I'm working on, or talk to her about like, you know, why financial freedom is a great thing, or, you know, whatever the thing might be. And I'll make faces at her and she'll kind of make faces at me and I'll make faces, you know, but that's like a 10-minute thing. I can choose to get involved with baby bath time, which I've done on various occasions because that's like a 5-minute thing. I can choose to go take baby for a walk in the pram if I want to, but all of this stuff is optional. I don't need to do any of it because the confinement nanny is here to do all of the stuff. And she does the night shifts. She is the one who's waking up with the baby at nighttime. And this is like a professional who does this for a living. Like in our case, our confinement nanny has been doing this for like several decades. And our baby was the 156th baby that she looked after. Right? So she's like literally a professional, has been doing this her whole life. Well, not her whole life, like half her life. And was just really good at doing baby care. So she knew all the strategies for like immediately putting the baby to bed. She knew all the methods for like burping the baby. She knew all the methods for like, the appropriate order in which to like do stuff to maximize sleep time for the baby. She knew how to kind of get a newborn baby to adhere to some sort of semblance of a routine, because she's done this 156 times, 155 times before. And so in our case, because we had a competent professional basically looking after the baby at nighttime, and Izzy was getting involved with the breastfeeding and the pumping and stuff, but for me it was like really optional, all of the stuff that I got involved with. It meant that I didn't really have much sleep interruption. I did a little bit, like, in the early days, the confinement nanny, when the baby would wake up, would bring the baby into Izzy in my bedroom, and then we would both wake up because the baby would be making some noise, and then Izzy would breastfeed. But like, I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, and so I would just sort of like see what's going on. Great. Roll over and just go to sleep again. And so my sleep scores before having a baby were like 100% consistently. Now they're like 85%. So it's still really, really good. I still get like 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, even though Izzy wakes up at the nighttime to feed the baby. Because the actual night shift, the logistics, like other than the feeding of the baby, the confinement nanny was handling everything else. The waking up, baby waking up, baby needing changing, baby needing burping in the middle of the feeds, baby needing to be swaddled and changed after the feed potentially, baby need to be put to bed and then put in the cot, and then she would sleep with the baby for like 2 hours, and then the baby would wake up again, or whatever the thing is. And so all of this stuff was being handled by a competent professional who's done this 155 times before, knows what she's doing, and who we literally hired for this. And so that just eliminates a large amount of like the having a newborn is really hard kind of cost that parents incur in most other parts of the world, and if you are not sufficiently privileged to be able to have the financial resources to hire a confinement nanny. Or you live in a country where hiring a confinement nanny is like insanely expensive rather than actually kind of reasonable like it is in Hong Kong. And for the first few days while we had this confinement nanny, I felt a bit weird about this. I was like, like, I feel like there's something supposedly magical that you're supposed to feel about like the suffering and the struggle. And while she was here, I tried my own night shift because I was like, you know what, I want to see what the fuss is about. I want to be the one to sort of sleep with the baby at nighttime and wake up and, bring the baby to be fed. Right? I think in that case, I bottle fed the baby like twice during the nighttime. This was a little bit further on when she was waking up every like 4 hours rather than every like 2 hours. Fed the baby twice during the night, did the change and stuff. And I was like, okay, I can see that this is interesting to do like once or twice. But it would not be fun if I had to do this every single day, or even most days, or even some days for an extended period of time, because I was just absolutely wrecked the next day. Because even though the baby only woke up twice during the night, I thought like 2 or 3 times, something like that, even though that was the case, it still completely screwed up my sleep. And then I was just like a zombie the next day. And this was just after one day of doing this. Whereas mostly what parents have to do is do this for a whole freaking 9 months, or 12 months, or 6 months, depending on how the baby is, without having someone to help with it, which is just absolutely nuts. I cannot imagine what this is like. I've got friends in the UK and the US who've had babies around the same time, and they are, oh my God, like when I hear the stories, I'm like, holy, like it's so hard being a parent and having to do the night shifts by yourself. Even if it's like two parents in the house, usually one of them is going to work. And so really it ends up with one person, usually the mum, sort of just on 24/7 baby care duty, because the dad usually the dad has to go to work the next day. And so like, you don't want the dad to be doing the night shift because then the dad's going to be a zombie at work. And so the mum ends up doing the night shift every single freaking day. And that is oh my God, that's so hard. I cannot imagine what that's like. I mean, I can imagine it but like, I cannot imagine how people suffer through that experience. And so like, I tried this a couple of times, realized that like, okay, it's really hard. And I also realized it's not something I want to do. I don't want to be doing the night shifts with a baby. I'll do them if I have to, if like the confinement nanny is off sick or is on a day off or whatever, or if there's an emergency or if we're traveling or whatever, then sure. But the fact that I didn't have to chronically do the night shifts, and the fact that Izzy also did not have to chronically do the night shifts, has been absolutely enormous for us in terms of our like mental health and physical health and everything else. I know people who've had like depression, who've had PTSD from these night shifts or the baby waking up screaming at night. People who have like felt that the first 6 months of having a newborn has been the worst 6 months of their life, because yes, you have this joyful bundle of joy and stuff, but also you're doing the night shift, so you're having to wake up every 2 hours with a screaming freaking baby. Oh my, it's just so hard. Unless you cheat, like we did, and outsource the difficult bits. This is where I'm still a bit unsure. Because some people say, I've read a bunch of stuff on the internet about this. I've spoken to a bunch of parents about this, and there's some stuff I've read on the internet that's like, the struggle and the suffering and the sacrifice that you make for your baby brings you closer to the baby, and it's better for bonding. I was like, okay, is that actually true? And so I did what sensible people do these days, and I asked ChatGPT and Claude, and I did a deep research query, and I was like, okay, let's look, is there any evidence that when the parents are the ones were sort of waking up in the middle of the night multiple times to feed the baby, that leads to better outcomes for the baby, compared to in countries where it's really normal for either the grandparents to do it, or for the confinement nanny to do it, or for household help to do it, or for someone else to do it. And broadly, what I saw looking at the research was, it doesn't really make much of a difference. As long as there is a competent carer who is emotionally there for the child and who is responding to the child's cues and needs, then it doesn't really matter who it is, as long as the thing is being done. And some articles even said that, at that age, babies can't even tell the difference between carer A and carer B, especially when they're super young. And so this is very outsourceable. And like literally everyone I've spoken to who has said, to be honest, if I could wave a magic wand and hire a night nanny to deal with the night shifts, that would have made the experience of having a newborn way more joyful. A bunch of my entrepreneur friends who have had kids before I did, they're all rich and can afford all this stuff. And they were like, yeah, 100%, mate. Like you've got to have a nanny for the nighttime and you've got to have a nanny for the daytime so that you can choose when to hang out with the kid and you can be there fully present when you want on your own terms. And then when you've had enough, or if you've got to work, or if you want to go out, or if you want to do anything else, or if you just don't want to do the night shift, you can just hand them over to the nanny and the nanny takes care of it. And that is game changing. And so hearing those sorts of reviews of nannies was a big part of why we decided to go down the route of hiring a confinement nanny. But it's also really unfair because on top of having a confinement nanny, it's been super helpful because Izzy's mum has been staying with us for the last many months. And so she's been an enormous help. So it's incredible having our baby's grandma in the house to be able to do a bunch of stuff. And she's been helping so much with the cooking and the groceries and looking after the baby and doing some of the night shifts and some of the morning shifts. But then in addition to Izzy's mum, we also have a full-time housekeeper who lives with us who deals with all the cooking, the cleaning, and the laundry. Laundry! That's another thing I didn't tell you about. When you have a baby, the baby gets through a shit ton of laundry because they're always soiling themselves. They're always burping or weeing or pooing on the sort of bed sheets that they're in, and sometimes the poo goes through the nappy and goes up the back, and then it sort of ruins whatever outfit they're wearing. They go through all these different burp cloths and stuff. So you end up having quite a lot of laundry to do. And then obviously if the baby vomits on you or something, you end up having to do whatever. So, the fact that we have this household helper here in Hong Kong, where it's way cheaper to hire full-time household help compared to in Western countries, again, has been freaking game-changing because it just removes quite a lot of the logistical headache associated with having a child. For all of those reasons, for me, having a baby has been almost exclusively a very positive experience. I work from home, and sometimes I choose to work with my team in the local coffee shop or in the local restaurant or in the local co-working space, which is a 5-minute walk from my house. But for the most part, I work from home. And so if I want to hang out with the baby, I can. If baby is awake at 10 a.m., and I've just been tinkering away on the computer, I can just go and do playtime with the baby and hold her for a bit and read to her for a bit. I can, sometimes what I've been doing, because apparently it's good for the baby to hear lots of vocabulary. This is another thing in a book called Brain Rules for Baby, which I also read recently. It's really good. But it's good for them to hear a lot of words. And so what I've been doing is sometimes when baby's sort of chilling, just lying on her playtime mat, if it's the morning and I'm working on a video or a course or a book chapter or something, my team and I have built an app called VoicePal, and VoicePal is a conversational writing app. So you sort of speak into it, and then it figures out what you're saying, then it asks you follow-up questions. So when planning videos, I will just hit record on VoicePal. I'll stick the phone next to me, and I'll sort of talk to the baby and sort of talk through my video idea with the baby. And obviously the baby can't respond, but VoicePal responds, and VoicePal asks me follow-up questions. And so then it sort of feels weirdly like I'm having a conversation with the baby about financial freedom, or about living life on your own terms, or about how to focus or how to be productive or whatever. And then obviously baby can't understand anything, but apparently they subconsciously learn the language and they pick up the vocabulary and stuff. And so I'm doing a lot of reading, a lot of talking to the baby, and at the same time, #productivity, also it's being recorded, and so I'm able to then do scripts for my videos while baby's doing the playtime. But then the playtime only lasts for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then it's time for baby to go to sleep, because apparently if they get stimulated for more than like 10, 15, 20 minutes, they get overtired. And apparently when babies are overtired, it's not that they sleep even more, it's that they don't sleep at all, which is another thing no one tells you. It's like, what? So you have to sort of, it's this balancing act between like getting the baby sufficiently stimulated that they are tired, but not so stimulated that they don't fall asleep. So anyway, I speak to the baby in the mornings or whatever, and then I'm like, okay, I can choose to, if she's falling asleep, sometimes I'll swaddle her myself and I'll like do the thing and I'll put her to bed because it's cute. But as soon as it gets difficult, if it's like, oh, actually she's not settling to the degree that I would like her to, I just hand her over to the nanny, and then the nanny deals with it. And it's like, great, I can go back and do the work thing. Baby sleeps for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. Then it's time for a feed. I can choose to do the feed if I want to. Sometimes I do it just because I'm like, it's quite fun, like sitting there with a baby in your arms and like feeding her a little bottle thing. It's quite fun. It's quite nice some of the time. It's not fun all the time. It's fun when you do it on your own terms, at least for me. Actually, this whole video is just my personal opinion, so I'm going to stop caveating. But it's not fun all the time. It's fun in small doses, like everything. The dose makes the poison. If I had to do every single feed 8 times a day throughout the night as well for a whole 9 months, I would probably not enjoy feeding the baby. But because I can do it whenever I feel like it, like, once a day, twice a day, a few times a week, depending on what's going on, it's quite fun. Like, I don't resent anything about baby care because I get to do it entirely on my own terms. And this is really unfair. This is really, really, really unfair. It's super privileged, the position that we're in. If I was a doctor right now, I'd be in the UK. I would be working. My wife would be truly suffering because we wouldn't have been able to afford household help because it's also really expensive in the UK, and we would have had a lot less money. Her mum still would have really helped. We would have had to rely a lot on our parents for support, which we absolutely would have done. But also you can't like rely on the parents that much that they're doing like all the night shifts. So Izzy would have had to do a bunch of the night shifts. I would have done the night shifts on the weekends, and it would have been this like real, and then sort of Izzy would have been at home alone for the most part, unless her mum would be visiting some of the time. And it would have been so much harder if we were in the UK and B, still in medicine. But because A, we're in Hong Kong, where domestic help is cheap. B, because I chose to start a freaking YouTube channel back in 2017 and chose 5 years before then to start a business because I realized I wanted to make money. Because we have the kind of lifestyle business that's optimized for being able to live life on our own terms. And because we can work from home and generate income by just making silly internet videos and writing a book every now and then and stuff, like, it's just really unfair. It means that I can basically get all of the benefits of having a baby with seemingly none of the drawbacks. And so if you're still at this point in the video and haven't like rage quit, and you are a parent, I would love to hear your perspective on this. Like, am I missing something? Because I feel like I've got the best of both worlds. I have all the joy associated with having a kid. I get to do the fun stuff, including like nappy changing and feeding and playtime and walks and bath time and bedtime and stuff, when I feel like it, rather than having to do it. That means that when I'm doing it, I get to show up with my full presence and stuff. And then whenever it starts to get boring, because it does start to get boring, like, everyone's like, oh my God, it's like pride and joy and it's like best thing ever. It's like, well, playing with a newborn gets kind of boring after about 10 minutes. So like, if someone else can take over, it's like, great, fantastic. Like, am I missing something? Is there some magic in suffering and struggle and sacrifice that I am actively missing out on because we're choosing to outsource quite a lot of these things to like nannies and housekeepers and stuff? I'm very open to changing my mind on this because this is genuinely the question that I ask myself. It seems too good to be true. It seems too easy. Everyone talks about how parenting is insanely hard, and I get why they say that. But I think if you outsource the hard bits, the bits that you don't want to do, it suddenly becomes way easier. And I have entrepreneur friends here in Hong Kong and also in the US who are like super rich, who can therefore hire all the household help. And they all say that like, yeah, man, the household help is really the difference between being miserable with the whole kids thing and having a lot of joy with the kids thing. Because when you have the household help, it means you can interact with the kids on your own terms. You can do it when your energy levels are high. You can be fully present. You're not cranky. You're not stressed. You're not tired. And so, am I missing something? I'm open to changing my mind on this. So I'd love to hear in the comments below, if you were in my position where you got the money, you can basically hire whatever household help you want. You've got a big enough house that it works in. What would you choose to do, and what would you choose to outsource, and why? Crucially, because I'm very open to changing my mind on this. This is the thing I think about a lot. Of like, am I being a bad parent by not struggling and not suffering? Am I missing out on some magical, like, fulfilling aspects of life and shit by not being the one to wake up during the night multiple times to a screaming baby and having to change and burp and stuff? That, like, am I missing something? What am I missing? Because if not, then, man, I've had some questions on my Instagram being like, oh, what's been the most surprising thing about having a child? Honestly, the most surprising thing has been how much harder it is being a mum than being a dad. Because like, I have no biological horse in this race, as it were. I did my bit for like many, sometime last year. But beyond that point, there's very little that a dad does from a biological perspective. It's really hard for the mum because of all the biological things associated, obviously, with pregnancy, childbirth, breastfeeding, etc., etc. So yeah, the most surprising thing is how hard it is being a mum, how chill it is being a dad, and in particular, how chill it is being a dad when you have money and a lifestyle business where you get to work from home and you live in a country like Hong Kong where domestic help is super easy and cheap to find. It just sort of feels like cheating. It feels really unfair. And man. Although, yeah, it feels really unfair. I guess life is unfair. Yeah. I want to share a few other thoughts, but I currently have a personal trainer session at the gym. So I will do that and I will be right back. Alrighty, we are back from the gym and I've got my little Greek yogurt here, and yeah, time to share a few more reflections if you are still here. If you are, thank you very much for watching. Number one is that as much as I've talked about how I, as the dude in the situation, have managed to avoid quite a lot of the difficulties with this, a big part of that is because my wife Izzy is taking on the absolute lion's share of the burden. I mean, obviously there's all the biological stuff, but there's also actually a large swath of what Izzy and I call between us like baby strategist, like the person who is doing the cognitive labor of thinking about how to raise the baby and doing the research on probiotics and figuring out like, okay, based on the fact that she had 5 days of antibiotics when she was born, like what's that going to do to her gut? What's that going to do to her immunity? Okay, what do we need to do? I've read a couple of baby books, but she reads like baby books all of the time and has been doing so much research into all of that stuff. She's been the one who's been trying to figure out like, okay, based on sort of the evidence and the research, like what's the optimal kind of baby schedule? She was the one who looked up all of the stuff around the skincare when the baby turns out to have like eczema. It's like, okay, what's the best emollient and like moisturizer and how does that work? And so there's this massive like cognitive labor side of the equation that I think isn't talked about enough. Like I've done a bunch of reading about this parenting stuff, and the cognitive research associated with the baby care stuff, I think is a thing that people underappreciate because it's like a major part of actually figuring out the strategy for how you're gonna raise the baby. And then all of the biological stuff, again, I don't wanna put words in her mouth, but basically breastfeeding, apparently, according to the research, takes away around 25% of your energy. And so if you imagine like your usual energy levels and just imagine those reduced by 25% because you're producing milk. So there's the energy that takes away, there's the emotional stuff associated with postpartum. Postpartum, according to a book that Izzy read called Matrescence, and she and I have had conversations about this, sort of when a woman gives birth and baby comes out, that in the woman's body is the largest hormonal change that a human being ever experiences in their lifetime, even more than the hormonal changes at adolescence. And we all know about like puberty and adolescence and being a teenager is hard and all that kind of stuff because hormones, but actually becoming a mum is an even bigger change in the hormone level, which massively changes everything about your life in terms of mood and emotions and like energy and motivation and all of the stuff. And so this is the stuff that Izzy is actively sort of dealing with right now, and that she's going to make videos about, and she's been reaching out to had conversations with various of our mum friends to talk about this kind of stuff. And having Izzy's mum here living with us as well here in Hong Kong for a few months has also been really helpful to have that kind of extra perspective on what it's like to be a woman in this situation. So as the dude, I've got it like 100 times easier than my wife does, and man, it's just so chill being a dad in comparison to being a mum. Another interesting reflection is that, so when we were in the hospital room for those 5 days, it was me and Izzy and our baby all in the hospital room together, and she was sleeping on like the main hospital bed. I was sleeping on like this, there was a little sofa bed, a little chair that converts into a sofa bed, and our baby was sleeping in the little cot thing that the hospital provided. And you know, I had a backpack with me that had my laptop and a camera and like another camera and like this a vlogging camera and like an iPad and a Kindle. And so like I basically had like my entire, well, it's not my entire tech setup, but I had my like portable productivity setup with me in the backpack. And I had a weird thought, which was that it really felt like those 5 days in the hospital with Izzy and baby, when we were all just living in this one room, we actually had everything we need to be happy. It was like the three of us, and we were broadly healthy and happy, and I had my stuff with me so I could do work if I wanted to. I did a little bit of work, but not too much. And I realized it was quite nice, really. It was quite liberating to know that if push comes to shove, me, wife, baby in a room, and me having my laptop and access to a camera, actually that setup, that is, I mean, for me, it's basically everything I need for my life, like in one place. And yes, it's nice having a bigger apartment and having household help and having fancy stuff and proper desk setup and lights and cameras and shit. But like at the end of the day, it was just like this profound, peaceful recognition that, hey, we have our little family now, me, Izzy, and our baby. And as long as we are together, then we can like handle anything. Also, I mean, this sounds corny and cheesy, and I sort of am kind of cringing saying this, but I remember really having that thought while we were in the hospital that like, oh, you know, our entire life fits in basically a cubicle. Me, wife, baby, and laptop bag. What more does a man need to be happy? I don't know, man. I think that's basically it. Another realization was I have never before appreciated the value of money until we had our baby. I'm going to talk about money. I talk about money on this channel quite a lot. If you get offended if someone talks about money, feel free to leave the video now. Although if you're at this point in the video, I hope you'll sort of hear me out on this. But basically, there's all this stuff around like chasing money. And I've always had a weird relationship with this where sort of I was quite obsessed with chasing money when I was in medical school and in my first couple of years working as a doctor because I was trying to buy my financial freedom. I didn't really care about getting rich. I cared about having options. Cared about having options to, for example, go part-time as a doctor or to be able to leave medicine if I found out that that's not what I enjoyed. And so while I was in medical school and while I was working as a doctor, I spent a large amount of time building up two specific skill sets. Number one is the skill set of like personal productivity and like self-mastery around like how to manage your time, attention, focus, energy, all of that jazz, how to design a life that you actually want to live and like how to actively kind of do productivity systems to work towards it and stuff like the stuff that freed up a lot of my time when I was at university and when I was working as a doctor. So there was this whole skill set around personal productivity. And then alongside that, I also built up this whole skill set around like financial independence. Like there is this enormous list of skills that school does not teach you. Namely financial literacy, how money actually works, how to make money for yourself independently of a job, how investing works, how to validate a product, how to do market research, how to do sales, marketing, operations. Like there's just an enormous list of stuff associated with making money in the modern world if you want to make money independently from your day job, which is what I wanted to do, that school never taught me. And so I taught myself while I was at university and beyond. And that's the skill set that I've been honing for the last since 2012. So for the last 13 years, I've been honing the skill set of kind of these sort of skills around financial freedom. And so the first thing to say on that front is that I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful to my former self for having the foresight to actually actively learn these two skill sets. The skill set of personal productivity and the skill set of financial freedom skills have completely changed my life because they've allowed me to generate income on my own terms and to live life on my own terms, which would not have been the case if I was still working in medicine in the UK. You know, after making a good chunk of money, I stopped being motivated by money. I stopped seeing money as being a particular thing, like a thing to strive for, because it's like once you have enough, it's like, you know, when is enough and all that kind of stuff. And if you've been following the channel for any length of time, anytime I do my sort of like annual or twice a year life update videos, I'm always grappling between this this desire for make more money, but also like chill out and like don't worry about making so much money. And I've been sort of like, it's a real first world problem, and you can feel free to get out your tiny violin and shit like that. But like there's always a balancing act between, do you want to go for more money or do you want to go for more chill, enjoyment, fun kind of stuff? And I've tried my best to sort of do things that do both. And quite a lot of the stuff I have done over the years, some of it has been for fun and fulfillment, some of it has been for money, some of it has been both. But I say all of this just because I now realize why having money is just really nice. Beyond it gives you options to quit your job. Because what having money does is that, for example, firstly, having money buys you private healthcare. And the public healthcare system in Hong Kong is actually pretty good, but the private healthcare system is way nicer. And so being able to have a private experience as it relates to maternity and spending 5 days in the hospital and like a really nice labor suite and like a super nice hospital room with a really nice view and amazing food and like midwives, that there were like 3 or 4 patients in the entire maternity unit rather than 400 like there would be in the public system. And we spoke to a bunch of our friends here in Hong Kong who've been through both the public and the private system for like maternity stuff, and they all basically said that, look, if you can afford it, you should go private because it's just a way nicer experience. And being in that hospital for those 5 days, being able to chill, relax after the baby was born, having like 24/7 access to like these incredible midwives that were teaching us the stuff, I was like, oh damn, like this is what money buys you. It buys you a really nice experience of childbirth, you know, to the extent that childbirth can be a pleasant experience. The thing that money also buys you is, for example, when we found out that like the baby needed antibiotics and had to stay in hospital for an extra 5 days, and looked at the fee structure of that, and it was like an extra £10,000 basically, for the baby to stay in the hospital for an extra 5 days and have the antibiotics and all of the stuff. And just being able to say that, like, no, it's only 10 grand, it's fine, let's do it, was like, if I'd have heard myself say that back when I had a real job working as a doctor and earning £40,000 a year, it would have been unfathomable, because £10,000 to me back then was like basically my entire net worth. Now it's like a tiny fraction of my net worth, and it sort of is an amount of money where it's like, you know what, yeah, it's a lot, but also, I mean, yeah, of course, we're going to pay the 10 grand to have a baby, stay in this nice hospital, and so we can stay with the baby rather than have to try and save money by like ferrying back and forth or like trying to get the baby transferred to the public system. And we were just able to say, yeah, of course, let's just go for it. And in that moment, again, I was so grateful to my previous self for like having learned the skills of personal productivity and financial freedom to have been able to make that decision. Then on top of that, it's like being able to hire the confinement nanny, being able to hire the housekeeper, and not having to worry about any kind of expenses as it relates to baby stuff because of the skills around generating money. So I really viscerally appreciated the value of having the financial resources when we were in this sort of like maternity, childbirthy type situation. And the reason I mention this is because I know there are people who watch this channel, maybe you are one of them, who want financial freedom, financial independence. You want to live life on your own terms. You want to be able to have enough money, ideally through passive income, although income is never truly passive, but like, as close to passive income as possible, so that you have options. You probably don't want a yacht. You probably don't want to be a Dubai boy, but you probably want options. You want the option to be able to, afford the best healthcare for your family if the situation calls for it. You want the option of being able to hire help if the situation calls for it. You want the option of being able to go part-time in your job, or maybe even quit the job completely to do work that lights you up even more. And the people around you might not understand this. They might not get why you care about financial freedom, financial independence. They might not understand why you care about money. They might say, like, especially if you're in a country like the UK or like Ireland or like Canada or places like that, be like, hey, what's wrong with you? Why don't you just appreciate what you've got? Be grateful that you just have a job in the first place. Like, why are you trying to, step outside of your lane, or like, we don't talk about money, or like talking about money is crass, or like, if you try and start a business, you're going to lose everything and it's so risky, and all of these sorts of things. And if you're in that position where you are actively trying to learn these skills to make more money on your own terms, not so that you can buy a yacht, but so that you have the freedom to live life on your own terms, and you are maybe being held back to some degree by the opinions of people around you, what I would say, for whatever it's worth, as a random dude on the internet speaking to you through a video on YouTube, what I would say is, keep going. When I was obsessed with money as a medical student, there were lots of people around me, not friends as such, because my friends were very supportive, but like, I always say acquaintances, other people in medical school, other people at university, who kind of looked down upon me or judged me or thought I was just some like greasy Asian course selling guy when I was selling courses for medical school applicants and stuff, who couldn't understand why I was spending my weekends and evenings like watching YouTube tutorials and reading books about how to make money and trying to build websites and stuff. They just couldn't understand it, and they were, to some extent, judging me for it. And I'm so glad that I didn't listen to those opinions, and I'm so glad that I just went with it and trusted my gut to be able to say that, like, no, I actually think I want financial options. I want the ability to go part-time if I need to. I want the ability to not do medicine if I don't have to. I want it to be an option. I don't want it to be an obligation. And I'm so glad that I didn't listen to them, and I just went with it, and I continued grinding away and working on these skills, because these skills have completely changed my life, and they have now changed my family's life. Like, my wife and my child have a very different experience of life because I've made money over the years compared to if I hadn't made money over the years. To be honest, if I was a doctor in the UK, we'd still probably be very happy, but we would have all the struggles associated with all of the stuff I've talked about. So in a way, money becomes a tool, and it's a tool that can buy freedom. It's a tool that can buy options. It's also a tool that can buy, to some degree, mental health and physical health. Because if you can afford to hire a nighttime nanny and you don't have to get postpartum depression and PTSD from having a baby wake you up screaming every hour of every night for 6 months, to me, there is no better use of money than that. Like, it's not about getting a fancy house or having a fancy yacht or like flying first class. What it's about is being able to make life easier and more enjoyable and more chill for like you and your family. And so if you're on that journey to financial freedom, keep going. You might hear people say that like you should be content with your lot in life, and that like you should be, money doesn't buy happiness, and like there are the finer things and the simpler things and all of that crap. But I would say that categorically, at least in my experience, all of this is just my own experience, at least in my experience, money buys a lot of options. It buys freedom. It might not buy happiness, but it buys removal of problems from your life, right? And so if you like that idea, then keep going on your journey towards financial freedom. You got this. It's going to happen. It's about learning the skills and applying the skills, and we're going to keep making videos on the channel about it because I feel so passionate about this, because this financial freedom stuff completely transformed my life. And I can basically attribute it, quite a lot of it, to the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss that I've read when I was 18, when I decided to start on this path of trying to build my own independent income streams outside of medicine. So keep going. You got this. Oh yeah, one thing that I noticed is that it feels quite nice being like the provider. I don't know if this is unfashionable to say, but like now, like having a wife and a baby now, and hopefully we'll have more babies in the future if the wife is up for it. It gives my work much more internal purpose. I'm no longer just doing it for myself. I now feel as if I'm doing it for the family, which is actually, it's actually quite a nice feeling. It has made doing work-related stuff just feel a little bit more meaningful. It's weirdly made me work harder. I mean, harder is relative. Like, I don't work very hard because this sort of stuff I do is not particularly hard. But it's made me feel more excited about working now that it's more than about just me, which is quite nice. It's also meant that now when I'm working, I actually take my feelings a lot less seriously. Pre-baby, I would take my feelings quite seriously about stuff. Be like, oh, I don't really feel like filming this video, or I don't really feel like doing this thing, or oh, we've got this workshop for one of our courses, but I don't really feel like doing it right now. And it's like, oh, woe is me. Get out my tiny violin. Like, my life is so hard. I mean, I wouldn't say my life is hard, but like, if I didn't feel like doing something, I would often not do the thing. But I realized post-baby that actually how I feel about the thing is actually somewhat irrelevant to me doing the thing. That's not to say that I don't enjoy the process. I do my best to enjoy the process and stuff, but like it's quite nice when it's quite nice now that like my own feelings are not like the ultimate North Star. It's nice that there is something bigger than my own feelings, namely providing for the family, and even kind of the impact that some of these videos have based on the comments and the people who come up to me in my workshops and stuff. When I think about providing for my family and being a good teacher to my fellow people on the internet who sometimes listen to or watch my stuff, that kind of stuff makes work genuinely feel way more meaningful compared to when I think about like, how do I personally feel? So weirdly, even though for the last, since having the baby, I've been doing more work stuff, even when I didn't feel like it, it's weirdly left me feeling more satisfied and more content and more fulfilled, even though I didn't feel like doing it in the moment, which is kind of interesting. Final thing to say is that having a baby has really also helped me slow down a bit, physically and also like emotionally. So for example, when the baby is sleeping on me and like I've got her on me and like we're just like sitting on the sofa or something, and I can sort of like feel her breathing, I notice myself, and I think this is like a physiological thing, but I notice myself feeling more calm, feeling more chill, feeling more like just happy to just be sitting there with the baby kind of sleeping on me, wrapped up in her little swaddle like a cute little caterpillar. It just feels really nice. It's really cool. And I find that in those moments, I'm not like thinking about other stuff, and I'm not thinking about multitasking, and I'm not thinking about listening to an audiobook, and I'm not thinking about how inefficient use of time this is because the baby's asleep and the baby can't really like, whatever. I'm not thinking about any of those things. I'm like not even thinking at all in those moments. I'm just sort of appreciating having the baby just sort of like lying there in my arms. It's just quite nice. It's quite a nice feeling. Would recommend if anyone is not a parent yet and is thinking about being a parent. That's a nice feeling. The other thing that's made me slow down physically is that when I strap the baby to me and take her to the local like coffee shop to get a coffee or something, I actually have to walk about 50% slower than I normally do. Like I'm a fast walker and a fast talker. I just do everything quickly because it's just what I've learned over time. But when you have a baby strapped to you, like I can't walk at my normal pace because the baby would then be bounced up and down quite a lot. So I have to walk quite slowly. And so it takes me twice as long to get to the local coffee shop when I have the baby strapped to me. But there's something quite nice about that. There's something quite nice about taking a leisurely, deliberately slow walk to the coffee shop and trying not to make any sudden movements and sort of gently narrating what I'm doing as I'm going along. Be like, oh, we're going down the lift now. We're going into the stairs. Oh, look at that. That's a nice tree. Or whatever the hell I say to the baby. Which is quite nice. It's quite nice to have that reminder to slow down a little bit. Relatedly, when I take the baby for a walk and I stick her in the pram and I sort of walk aimlessly around, I don't have any goal in mind. The goal is simply to go on a walk with the baby and to just enjoy the time. And the baby's just sort of sitting there in the pram, like looking around and just like occasionally making faces and stuff. And I'm just sort of walking and looking at the baby and looking around and just sort of walking aimlessly. And there's something nice about having aimless walking to just do with the baby. I don't do very much stuff in my life that's not goal directed. Even when I'm playing a video game, for example, which you would think is an enjoyable thing. And it is. It's like I like to play on like a hard difficulty setting. I like to challenge myself. I like to level up. I like to look at the strategies. And almost everything in my life is to some degree goal directed. But walking to the coffee shop with a baby just to grab a coffee and then walk back, there's no real goal there. I could make a coffee at home if I wanted to, but it's nice to just do the walking. Taking the baby for a walk and just going up and down in the pram. It's nice to just do that thing. So having the baby has actually given me it's a good vehicle for like mindfulness and like slowing down and being present and all that, like whatever the hell being present means. But like, you know, that's what I mean. So overall, it's been a thoroughly enjoyable experience so far, and I would recommend it. It's not been very hard, thanks to all the stuff that I've said in the video. My wife Izzy has had it way tougher because for various reasons, mostly biological, and some emotional, some hormonal, some social, but like she's had it way tougher than I have. And collectively, we have had it way easier than lots and lots of our friends who are not in such a privileged situation as we are with the kind of work that we do, the kind of lifestyle that we have, and just the fact that we've built online lifestyle businesses and don't have to go to a workplace or ask anyone's permission to take maternity leave or anything like that. So final thing to say is thank you. Thank you to you if you've gotten to this point in the video. And if you are a parent, I would love to hear a comment down below of like what's been your experience of it. Any advice for me in particular? Like, am I a bad parent for not suffering through the process? Let me know what you think. And secondly, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, thank you as well. It is not lost on me that probably the main reason as to why my family and I have the level of financial freedom, financial independence that we do, is because this YouTube channel randomly took off around 2018 after about 85 videos that I made since 2017. And you guys who watch the videos, whether you've been following for the last 8 years or the last 8 minutes, it doesn't matter. Either way, the fact that you are watching these videos and giving your time and attention to the videos, and maybe some of you even bought some of my courses and stuff, like you are ultimately the audience who funds our life. And so thank you for that. That is something that I hope to never take for granted. And I hope to keep showing up and providing value on YouTube, on Instagram. So you can follow me on Instagram if you really want to, on my email newsletter. That's the thing where I share a bunch of stuff. And if you do sign up to one of our courses, I hope that you get lots of value from it. And yeah, just wanted to say a big thank you. If Izzy's video has come out, I will link it over there, so you should check out her channel and also like, comment, subscribe on her videos and stuff, because she's been the ultimate best wife ever, best mom ever, ultimate trooper through this entire journey of pregnancy, childbirth, etc., etc. And so you should check out her stuff right over here. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you hopefully in the next video. Bye-bye.